Hey everyone, you are listening to the Self-Awareness Journey podcast. This little banter is about a car ride long and features your hosts, JJ Parker and Melissa Albers. JJ owns a tech company and Melissa has been a coach working with influencers for the last 18 years. Hey, you know how you get those Facebook memories that pop up like a year ago or 2 years ago in your past?
Yes, I love those because I always forget what I did last year.
Exactly. I got a pop-up this morning from my best friend in the UK, a Facebook memory from 2 years ago today. We were in Paris. We were in Paris with my favorite daughter. Okay, I just have the one. And
I hope she's listening.
Exactly. We had just landed and we were so excited to explore the city. We dropped all of our bags in the little hotel room because everything is much smaller there than here. And we ran out to the sidewalk to start exploring.
Yep.
And we were so happy and so excited. And the pop-up memory was a screenshot of the iPhone activity app showing that day we walked 27,000 steps, which was the equivalent of 11.8 miles.
Wow, that's a day.
And we were in flip-flops.
What?
We were in flip-flops. Again, my daughter was not. She was in sensible tennis shoes, but Fiona and I, there we were in our flip-flops, out to conquer the world, don't care.
So you're just like so excited to explore the city that you just like didn't even think about what you were doing and just jumped right in.
Right, being the seasoned world travelers, you know. Actually, we have done a lot of traveling, but we still make incredibly stupid decisions. That being one of them. But you know, it got me wondering about how much has changed in the last 2 years. How much has changed in Paris with the loss of that beautiful Notre Dame, just with all of the world things that have changed. And it got me thinking, I wonder if with self-awareness changes, as we grow in self-awareness, do our worldviews change?
Well, that's a really good question.
Yeah. I'd just be curious what you think about that.
That's a question that makes me kind of really have to think hard. I don't have like a off the top of my head kind of answer for that
Right.
kind of question.
Okay, I maybe did trick you a little. I maybe tricked you just a little with that. But you know, like if you start thinking about this on a bigger scale, right?
Yes.
How we see everything can be affected by our own how we see ourselves.
Yeah, I was just thinking, you know, for me, I would say working on self-awareness and actually working on what I consider like the trigger or the reaction part
Yeah.
of self-awareness definitely has had an effect on my worldview, right? I think it actually has caused me to like think more globally,
Yeah.
right? Not get so stuck with like what's happening right now and what my reaction is right now, and just say, oh yeah, okay, I'm having a reaction, but let's think about that in a, you know, say global context, right? Does it
Yeah.
really actually matter that much
Yeah.
if we think more globally?
That's interesting. And like, and even if we maybe change the word that we're using, instead of globally, if we use the word expansive, like, does this
Yeah.
change our view of, does this make our view more expansive? And like, you
Yeah.
could take it in a lot of different directions here, but what if we just start like at the very broadest point and say, with greater self-awareness, does it change your view of the entire universe, like your
universe.
spiritual?
Yeah.
yeah. Music. Cue the music, JJ. But does it change your spiritual awareness?
Well, I think it definitely does. You know, I'd say that I'm going to guess that a lot of people that maybe listen to the podcast work on things like self-awareness are probably also working on other parts of the way they see the universe too,
Interesting.
right? I don't know that like our work in self-awareness is isolated to just,
Yeah. Yeah,
like
of course.
this real, so I'd say as I work on self-awareness, I'm also working on how I see the universe and how I think everything connects and, you know, sort of working on that spirituality side too, right?
Yeah.
But like I said, I think part of the self-awareness stuff definitely plays in there because, as you unpack some of those bigger questions, you have to kind of make sure you don't get yourself knocked off center. I mean, part of that exploration is making sure you're staying really centered and in really a place of contentment, right? That's what you're searching for.
Right. Right.
And using some of these techniques
Yeah.
is really helpful for that.
You know what's interesting too is as we're having this conversation, you went to the reactive side, how you would have a feeling or have an awareness, and then the reactive side. I actually went on the other end of the stick, which was the proactive side. And that's super interesting just at how we did that, even in our own conversation right now. Because for me, like when I'm working on self-awareness, I feel like before I was highly aware, everything that I did came through more judgment. And it started with judging myself. I was a lot more judgmental on myself. I beat myself up a lot. I've talked in, previous lessons and podcasts about my high sense of everything has to be perfect. I put myself under these unrealistic expectations all the time. And then if I hit them, if I was successful in hitting an unrealistic goal, I didn't even celebrate that. I just said to myself, well, you probably didn't set the goal high enough. I mean, I was under constant self-judgment. It was like a death of a thousand cuts. And so whenever I would look outwardly, I had the same view. And how would you not? How would I not have the same view? So I judged everybody and everything that I saw through the same harsh lens that I was judging myself. And I feel like this work has afforded me a lot more flexibility and a lot more gentleness. And the phrase that I use weekly is that it has afforded me the perspective of assume goodwill. Assume goodwill on myself and everything else around me.
Yeah. Well, I bet that's having like positive effects on your relationships.
Well, yeah. I mean, it certainly is. And most importantly, with my relationship with myself. But like when we're talking about this self-awareness in worldviews or more global perspectives or more expansive views of things, like this would just be interesting. Like, how would I see global issues happening today? If I were to compare myself 5 years ago and now.
Yeah. Yeah. My reaction to that or my, experience is kind of a lot like you said, like I'm a lot less judgy.
Yeah.
Right? And actually, I think I'm a lot more tolerant and compassionate for other people's views. Right? I mean, even if you think, if you bring it down, we started from the universe, but if you just bring it down to, even, global issues or, even U.S. issues,
Yeah.
Not that we want to get into, politics about things, but like, I think I was much more rigid in my thinking around what people should do, what they should think, how they should act. And I think that this, the self-awareness journey has helped me become more compassionate and to say, hey, there's all these different opinions.
Yeah.
It's okay. and my reaction to them shouldn't be a judgment of them. You know what I mean?
Well, and even how I love how you even just started the conversation, how you said, we don't have to make this about politics. And you said that because we are all under such heightened emotion and heightened reactions to things right now that even in a conversation like that we're having right now, we almost feel the need to sort of say, no, we're not going to take a hard stand. We're not judging. We're simply having an awareness of how we are feeling and responding to things.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that we're taking a hard stand on things. As a matter of fact, we're suggesting that we've really lightened up on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an interesting way to think of it, right? Because we had a whole teaching about just because you don't reactively disagree with something doesn't necessarily mean that you agree with it.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly right. And you know what? I just realized we've mentioned the teaching a couple of times in this podcast. If other people are interested in seeing those teachings, they can find it at our website, which is theselfawarenessjourney.com. So I'm not trying to shamelessly plug us, but if people are curious,
That's a thing they keep talking about.
So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just thought I better add that.
It's not that we shamelessly promote ourselves. It's just that we're really bad at promoting ourselves.
We're terrible. But but as we're thinking this through a little bit, I find it very interesting that as we're talking about how we see things globally, and we started talking a little more about U.S. issues, and then we've got closer to home issues such as our communities, right? We've got neighborhoods that we live in. We have schools our children go to. We have churches. We have organizations that we're part of. And with more self-awareness, I certainly feel that it creates a little balance. At least it does for me. It allows me to engage in, I'll tell you, it's allowed me to engage in even highly charged conversations without taking a stand. And not feeling bad or guilty about that, or without feeling like I'm getting amped up because other people are.
Yeah, you're not, as a way to state it, you're not letting other people control your emotions. You're not letting groups, situations, politics, you're not letting these, we talk a lot about one-on-one interactions, right? Triggers with other people.
Right.
But certainly there's triggers that are more based on what groups of people are doing, right?
That's right.
Or actually, and it gets actually even weirder maybe, there's triggers based on ideas that are floating around on the internet, right?
Yes. Yes.
Even an idea or a concept can really trigger you.
Yep. Yeah.
And some of them are just dumb or made up or false or whatever. But if you get triggered by that stuff and then you're not able to rationally think about it, it's not, it's pretty tough.
Which brings it back to what you were saying, is that this allows self-awareness for you, allows you to have a different relationship with your reactions.
Yeah.
And for those moments when you're sideswiped and something hits you and you weren't looking for it, you weren't expecting it, and then bang, somebody all of a sudden throws some major thing at you and expects you to pick up the sword and run with them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's basically the entire fundamentals of the internet right there.
Well, you certainly see it in certain pockets with, with Facebook, for example. I have noticed so many of my friends that are, all on different spectrums of awareness, all on different spectrums politically, socially, economically. And I have noticed many of them taking themselves off of social media right now.
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's just so heated, or it's so convoluted and extreme that
Right.
people are shutting down. They don't know what else to do, so they just hide or run away.
Yep. So let's think about that, right? Because like I've done that, right? I
Mm-hmm,
don't
mm-hmm.
like want to engage in that kind of interaction and that kind of platform. Um, Although, so what's interesting is I did that years ago,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because for your exact reason, like I don't even know how to deal with this. This makes me feel crappy when I go on here. There's all these people with different opinions. I don't know how to deal with it,
Yeah.
right? So a totally natural reaction is just hide from it, go away.
Mm-hmm.
My wife would always give me a hard time for like not knowing what's going on in the world,
Mm-hmm.
and I was just kind of like, I am just blissfully have my head in the sand. I don't,
Blissfully unaware.
right? Like on purpose, like
Yeah.
because like Facebook or like watching the news, I can't watch the news. Like I can't watch it. It doesn't make me feel good. It
Yeah.
makes
Yeah.
me feel like crap.
Yeah.
So I don't want it. So I don't watch it. So I also the side effect is I don't really know like daily events very well
Mm-hmm.
unless
Yeah.
someone else tells me.
Yeah.
Um, but so just reflecting on that, like hiding is definitely a technique, right? Which
Yes.
I've
Yep. Yep.
obviously well employed. But why was I doing that? I was doing that because like I wasn't really connecting, like my reactions, my physical reactions. I didn't have very good self-awareness in that time in my life. So like I just felt I was being jerked around
Hmm.
by this media, right?
Right.
Whereas now if I watch it, I can watch it through a much different lens. Like, yep, the whole point of that is to try to actually jerk my emotions around. That's
Yes.
okay. I can take it for what it is. I can have a better understanding of it, and I can actually like just you know deal with my own internal reactions, and it's not so bad, right? Like I
Right.
can it's now I can watch the news and not get so upset.
Right. Yeah, but that's really real. And I think too that the reason things are so amped up right now is because there is just there are many big things happening in our world today. The pandemic, the George Floyd situation. There are, huge weather events happening in communities where people are already sick. I mean, there's so many, and this is also the year of re-electing or electing a new president. So there's so many things that are happening that are really, really big things. And I think people have all these emotions and they're not exactly sure where to put them. And I think depending on the level of awareness and maybe the level of emotion, people are making decisions to engage in ways they never have before, or certainly
Mm.
expanded ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that you'll see people getting much more hostile if there isn't everyone is on the same page. You'll see
Mm.
people becoming much more angry. There's a lot of anger, but as I always say, anger is a secondary emotion, and the first emotion is always fear.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
with all of these big things going on, that's a lot of change, and that creates a lot of fear. And I think that a lot of times, even when you see a lot of people that are, trying to take big political stands, they're becoming very vocal. They want to be a thought leader in their community, or they want to be the loudest voice in their circle of influence to prove that they believe in a certain thing one way or the other. But where I think self-awareness really impacts this is if you are very aware of yourself and the energy that you are putting out, the way that people take you is also really different based on that.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I have an awareness of myself more and I'm practicing every day, my hope is that I can be a centered, stabilizing force to make people feel more safe,
Yeah.
to make people feel more calm. And so the way that I might come out and try to be a thought leader in my community or an influencer would be very different than even me 5 years ago when I talked about how judgmental I was and how everything I did was through the lens of competition and judgment.
Mm-hmm.
A thought leader or an influencer that is leading with that energy is much more divisive.
Yeah. Yeah, I like what you're saying. We've had conversations around, the kind of energy you put out and being purposeful about it, right? And I like, you're saying, hey, self-awareness has allowed me to understand the kind of energy I put out and decide the kind I want to put out.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
And that has an impact on the kind of influence you can have.
Right. And the whole point of it is not to create your influence externally. That's not the point. The point is to be really clear with how you validate yourself. And then you become an influencer as a secondary. You're not doing it because that's your goal, but that's what ends up happening.
Yeah, I'm just like, wow, that's probably a whole episode in itself is like self-awareness and influence.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that, so we shouldn't probably get completely derailed on that topic right now, but
Oh, you're such a buzzkill. It was so fun.
I know.
But I do think that, for me, like, I really like what you were saying is being more aware of yourself and how you feel and what things are going to make you feel your best. You know how to avoid certain things that just set you up for not being successful.
Yeah.
Which, like you mentioned, watching the news. I don't watch the news either. I won't watch the news. As a matter of fact, I now have my husband not watching the news with me. And he used to be, oh no, we're watching the news. Everything stops in our house when the news is on.
Talk about influence.
That's funny.
Well, I think this has been a pretty interesting conversation. The idea that self-awareness can, not only change our view with things right in front of us,
Mm-hmm.
how we interact with our friends, our family, and then moving beyond that to how we respond in our communities, in our country, and all the way to how it's maybe changed our view of the entire universe and how we maybe fit into that puzzle.
Yeah. And I think too, like as a takeaway for those listening, it would be really interesting to just for a moment after listening to this, it would be really interesting to sort of do an inventory, do a quick inventory of yourself and notice what are the things that you really react to quickly in a favorable sense. And what are the things that you react to every single time in a way that doesn't make you feel good? Notice that piece. And then also sort of notice your energy. What is it that you kick out? What is it that you are proactive about? And has your awareness helped you to decide on both of those fronts, ways that you can be that make you feel good?
Yeah, that's a really great activity.
Yeah, good conversation. We hope that you've enjoyed today's episode. Our mission is to help people become happier and more effective by gaining insight into their own thoughts and feelings. We'd love your support. First, share this podcast with anyone you think might enjoy it. Second, leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast site. This helps others discover the podcast so we can reach more people. And third, sign up for our newsletter at theselfawarenessjourney.com. This will help us communicate better with you and build our community. Thank you so much for joining us in the Self-Awareness Journey. We'll see you next week.